Hello and welcome to the Ghost Town Chronicles. Did you know that there are thousands of abandoned factories around the world? It's true, and today we will be exploring the untold stories of 10 most mesmerizing abandoned factories from around the world. Make sure to watch till the end of the video to learn about Bethlehem Steel Plant in Pennsylvania and more. Countless factories that were once buzzing with industry now lie eerily silent, having been abandoned and left to fall to ruin as relics of the world's industrial heyday. From American megafactories to a textile plant that was taken over by the Nazis, read on to explore the long-forgotten buildings that hark back to a time when much of the world's population worked in manufacturing. Number 1. Continental Rubber Factory, Hanover, Germany. Built in the late 19th century and expanded in the 1920s, the Continental Rubber Factory in Hanover has a checkered history. During World War II, Continental used forced labor at the factory, with the enslaved workers provided by the Nazi Party and subjected to horrific conditions. Operations ceased for a time towards the end of World War II but resumed again in 1945 and continued until 2000. When the factory was finally abandoned. At present, the desolate site, which has attracted more than its fair share of urban adventurers, is in the process of being demolished to make way for a housing development. Number 2. Canada Malting Silos, Montreal, Canada. This imposing grain malting factory was built in around 1904, sitting adjacent to the Lachine Canal and Montreal's Saint-Henri neighborhood. A well-known landmark in the area, the Canada Malting Silos produced an impressive 250,000 pounds of malt per year in its heyday, and supplied a plethora of local distilleries and breweries. The factory was sold in the 1980s and had a brief second life as a soya and corn warehouse before being abandoned in 1989. Since then, the crumbling building has been the setting of several urban art projects, including a light show. Unfortunately, the graffiti-covered building has also been subject to vandalism. Community group Nous La Malting has been trying to get funding to turn the site into social housing, and in August 2018 received $10,000 from the Southwest Borough to develop a project proposal. However, there are currently no firm plans to restore or redevelop the building. Number 3. Fordlândia, Aveiro, Brazil. The Amazon rainforest is probably the last place you'd expect to find an abandoned factory. On the banks of the Tapajós River, however, lies Fordlândia, an industrial ghost town that was the brainchild of Henry Ford, founder of the Ford Motor Company. Ford struck a deal with the Brazilian government and was granted 3,900 square miles of land in exchange for a 9% share of any profits made. He had a plan. He wanted to take advantage of the region's rubber trees in order to compete with Britain's monopoly of the market. He envisaged building a factory that would produce car tires, as well as creating a surrounding town to house its 10,000 workers. In 1928, 1 year after the Ford Motor Company ceased production of its iconic Model T, Fordlândia was founded, but the project was rife with problems. For one thing, the Brazilian workers objected to the harsh rules imposed by their American managers. Developers had planted 3.6 million rubber trees, but they were positioned too close together, making them easy targets for blight. After just 2 years, the workers held a revolt that saw them cut telegraph wires and intimidate management, with the dispute only ending after the Brazilian army intervened. By 1934, the dream was over and Fordlândia lay abandoned. Ford's estate ultimately made a loss of over $20 million, which is more than $308 million in today's money. Henry Ford's grandson, Henry Ford II, sold the land back to the Brazilian government in 1945, by which time the invention of synthetic rubber was making natural rubber plants obsolete. Today, many of the American-style workers' homes have been reclaimed, but the water tower, sawmill, and workshops still stand as empty shells in the Amazon. Number 4. Kiddie Kloes Factory, Lansford, USA. Opened in 1904, this venerable factory in Lansford, Pennsylvania started out as a silk mill. Following the widespread adoption of cheap artificial alternatives such as rayon and nylon, it was repurposed as a factory for clothing business Rosenau Brothers. Rosenau Brothers was notable for making dresses under its Cinderella Frocks label. The brand was made famous after its dresses were worn by child star Shirley Temple in movies such as The Good Ship Lollipop, with an estimated 15 million units selling between 1934 and 1941. The company folded in 1988, but a group of enterprising employees snapped up the machinery and created the Kiddie Kloes label. Sadly, the brand eventually went the same way as Rosenau Brothers, and the factory closed for good in 1996. The building and much of its contents are still in place, slowly decaying. In 2017, Preservation Pennsylvania added the building to its Pennsylvania at-risk list, although it has been reported that local residents hope to restore it. Number 5. Hudson Plant, Detroit, USA. Founded in 1909 in Detroit, Michigan, the Hudson Motor Car Company was one of America's biggest car manufacturers in the early 20th century. By 1925, it had become the third largest automobile maker in the U.S. behind Ford and Chevrolet, and it employed roughly 17,000 people by the time World War II broke out. In the 1950s, however, the demand for Hudson cars started to slow down, with sleeker models and smoother production lines becoming the norm. Standing at 6501 Mack Avenue, the Hudson plant in Detroit is one of the company's few remaining factories. Although many other plants were taken over by the car company Chrysler, the Hudson plant has stood empty for decades in what was once one of the busiest streets in the city. Number 6. Packard Automotive Plant, Detroit, USA. The Packard Automotive Plant in Detroit first opened its doors in 1903, with its premises eventually expanding to a bewildering 3.5 million square feet, 325,000 square meters. At the time of its opening, the factory, which belonged to the Packard Motor Car Company, was considered to be the world's first truly modern automobile manufacturing facility. At its peak, the plant employed 40,000 people across 80 different trades. The colossal factory was shuttered in 1958 after the Packard Motor Car Company went bust, but the site continued to house other businesses until the late 1990s. It then became a venue for underground raves, as well as a haven for urban explorers. The largest abandoned industrial complex in the world, the derelict plant was undergoing redevelopment until October 2020, when plans were suddenly scrapped. The former plant is now for sale and has been split into two 20-acre sites, which went on the market with an asking price of $5 million, £3.7 million in autumn 2021. Number 7. Oustau Ceramic Factory, Aureilhan, France. One of the most aesthetically pleasing abandoned industrial buildings in our roundup, the stunning Oustau Ceramic Factory, nicknamed the Red Factory, stands in Aureilhan, a town in the southwest of France. The factory was co-founded in 1873 by the industrialist Laurence Oustau, who was famed for having perfected a unique technique for glazing bricks. The factory specialized in the production of bricks and tiles, and it also reportedly boasted the first brickyard in France to use kilns with gas burners. The Red Factory's halcyon days were in the early part of the 20th century, and the business fell into a gradual decline before finally closing for good in 1970. The building was declared an historic French monument in 1994. Despite this impressive status, the once thriving factory stands in a state of disrepair to this day, and is crying out for a sympathetic restoration. Number 8. Abandoned Textile Factory, Forst, Germany. Forst, a town in Brandenburg, was once dubbed the German Manchester, due to its abundance of factories and other industrial buildings. Among them was this textile factory, which was built for two Jewish brothers in 1923. The Nazi Party took control of it during World War II. Once the conflict ended, the factory was used as a district administration office by the Socialist Union Party. This came to an end after Germany's peaceful revolution of 1989, and the building has stood empty ever since. According to reports, it has been completely stripped of all contents, with a rotten staircase making it too dangerous to safely explore. As well as the austere factory buildings, a large number of grand villas remain. These once elegant mansions originally housed the owners of Forst factories, and are believed to have been erected at great expense. Today, many of them have been allowed to go to rack and ruin, although several have been restored. Number 9. Fisher Body Plant 21, Detroit, USA. Yet another factory left abandoned in Detroit, Michigan is the Fisher Body Plant 21. The Fisher clan is considered to be one of the founding families of the American car industry, and they branched into automobiles after first making a name for themselves with their horse-drawn carriage shop in Norwalk, Ohio. Fisher Body became the world's largest producer of car body parts, and the Fisher Body Plant 21, pictured, was its biggest factory. It was located on 700 Packard Avenue in downtown Detroit, and was just a short walk from the Ford Packard plant. The Packard area was synonymous with car production at the start of the 20th century. The fortunes of the Fisher family and their factory changed when integrated chassis were invented in the early 1900s. As car companies started to produce their own body parts in-house, the demand for the goods manufacturers at the Fisher Body Plant 21 sharply dropped. After changing hands numerous times in the 20th century, the 3.7 million square feet, 344,000 square meters plant was eventually abandoned. Bar visits from urban photographers and graffiti artists, it has been empty since 1993. Although a $1 million restoration project has been launched, the future development of this historic site remains uncertain, and it's now part of the Packard Avenue Industrial Historic District. Number 10. Bethlehem Steel Plant, Bethlehem, Pennsylvania. Bethlehem Steel Corporation, former American corporation formed in 1904 to consolidate Bethlehem Steel Company of Pennsylvania. The Union Iron Works with shipbuilding facilities in San Francisco, and a few other smaller companies. The company's history traces to 1857, when a group of railroaders and investors of the city of Bethlehem, Pennsylvania, founded the Saucona Iron Company, which 4 years later was renamed Bethlehem Iron Company. The works was designed principally to turn out wrought iron railroad rails. In 1899 the facilities were acquired by a newly formed enterprise, the Bethlehem Steel Company. The major founder of the corporation in 1904-05 was Charles M. Schwab, who had earlier been one of the major figures in the creation of United States Steel Corporation in 1901. In August 1901 he had bought control of Bethlehem Steel Company, only to see it fail in a financial scandal. Schwab borrowed and invested heavily to save the company's assets, absorb other companies, and launch the Bethlehem Steel Corporation. The corporation thrived, partly as a result of the expanding orders for guns, munitions, and naval vessels from European powers both before and during World War I. In the first 4 decades of its existence, the corporation absorbed a number of iron ore, coal, and steel-producing properties from coast to coast. During World War II and the post-war years, it continued to expand. Like other American steel companies, Bethlehem began to diversify during the 1970s in the face of strong competition from foreign steelmakers. Its other activities included the production of plastics and related chemical products and the mining of non-ferrous ores. Despite its attempt to diversify, Bethlehem Steel was ultimately brought down by a variety of factors, including low-cost foreign competition and the loss of millions of dollars in a lawsuit. In 2001, the corporation filed for bankruptcy protection, and 2 years later it, along with more than 20 of its subsidiaries, including Bethlehem Rail, Greenwood Mining, and Chicago Cold Rolling, was dissolved and its assets sold. Thank you for joining us on this journey through 10 most interesting abandoned factories in the world. If you enjoyed the video, please consider leaving a like and subscribing to the channel for more interesting videos. See you next time.